Guys, I just picked each and every single division in the NFL. Now it's time for me to make my playoff predictions. So in the AFC, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars getting the bye. I think they have a very easy schedule. I believe Trevor Lawrence will be the league MVP the second year in Doug Peterson's system. He's my fantasy QB for a reason. Give me Jacksonville as the 1 seed. As my 2 seed, I got the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the New York Jets. The 7th spot in the AFC was very tough for me, but I ultimately came down to 2 teams, the Jets and the Bills. I think both of those teams are a little bit overhyped going into the year, but I have a little bit more trust in Aaron Rodgers this year than I do in Josh Allen, and that's what ultimately propelled the Jets to get that 7th spot. However, in the playoffs, I've dubbed Aaron Rodgers Aaron Fraudgers. When I was doing an auditing project last semester and I typed the word fraud, it auto-corrected to Fraudgers because I've called them that on numerous occasions. Aaron Rodgers has been a playoff choke artist these last 3 years against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Home NFC Championship game. The only NFC Championship home game he's ever had. He lost to Tom Brady. There's no shame in losing that game, but he didn't play very well. Then he played Jimmy Garoppolo in the divisional round of the playoffs. That was the one divisional round game that weekend where I completely had total trust in Green Bay. There is no way Green Bay is going to allow this game to be 17-13, to be 13-10, a low-scoring battle. Aaron Rodgers is the league MVP. He's not losing to Jimmy G, and he lost to Jimmy G on his home building. And although last year he didn't play in the playoffs, he had a de facto playoff game in his home building, win and you're in against the Lions, and the Detroit Lions pulled off the upset. Now he's going to have to go on the road this season and go into Patrick Mahomes' building, try to knock him off, and it ain't going to happen. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to beat the New York Jets. As my 3rd seed, winning the AFC North, I got the Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Joe Burrow is going to handle his business. Kenny Pickett's still a young player, and Cincinnati has swept Pittsburgh these last 2 years. I expect them to sweep them this year and ultimately beat them for the 3rd straight time. The Steelers are a young football team. Mike Tomlin's good enough to make the playoffs, but they're still limited offensively, and the Bengals have been there and done that. Cincinnati advances. Now for the matchup that I'm most excited to talk about, we have the Miami Dolphins taking on the Baltimore Ravens. Last year, this game was an absolute shootout. Tua had his coming out party, threw 6 touchdown passes, proved to everyone that he could play in this league. But I gotta go with Action Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens pulling off the upset. The Ravens get to the divisional round. Now for my NFC side. I got the Dallas Cowboys going 13-4 and getting that number 1 seed. This is a team that added 2 key players in Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore. I believe Philly will have somewhat of a hangover. The Niners have a tough schedule, and the other 3 division winners aren't as talented as Dallas, so I got the Cowboys getting a 1st round bye. As my 2nd seed in the NFC, I got the Seattle Seahawks going up against the Chicago Bears, and I think the Seattle Seahawks will beat the Bears. Chicago is a young team. I have them tripling their win total from a year ago. But this is a team that is still, if they make the postseason, it will be by the skin of their teeth. It's not because they're a loaded unit. Seattle was here last year. They played well in their playoff game against San Francisco up until the 4th quarter. I think Seattle breaks through and advances to the divisional. As my 3-6 matchup, I got the Saints taking on the Niners. Although I have my concerns with Brock Purdy, I think that defense will overwhelm Derek Carr in his first meaningful playoff game. I got the Niners advancing to the divisional round. And for my final wildcard matchup, we got the Lions taking on the Eagles. This is a rematch of Week 1 last year. offensive game back and forth, but Philly showed that they were the superior team. Philly showed that they could go on a deep playoff run last year, and I think the Eagles will beat the Lions. The Lions haven't won a division. The Lions haven't faced these expectations before. I believe in their talent, but Philly will find a way to advance to the divisional round. So that leaves us with a matchup of Jacksonville and Baltimore in the AFC. And although I am tempted to pick the Baltimore Ravens to pull off this upset against the Jacksonville Jaguars, I can't do it. I think Doug Peterson will have his boys ready. The last time he had a bye as a coach, he ended up in the playoffs. He ended up winning the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. The Jags also beat Baltimore last year, so they advanced to the AFC title game, and there will be an AFC title game played in Jacksonville this season. But the matchup of all matchups, number 6, baby, we got Kansas City going up against Cincinnati. I think Kansas City will beat Cincinnati in the regular season when these two teams meet. But when push comes to shove, Cincinnati will get the last laugh. The Bengals beat the Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium. The thing that really hurt the Bengals last year is when they opened their mouths, when they started talking, when they said Arrowhead was Burrowhead Stadium, when the mayor said that Patrick Mahomes' father was Joe Burrow. And yet that game was still very close. It came down to the wire. A couple calls, a couple plays here and there, and Cincinnati may be going to the Super Bowl. I think the Bengals exact revenge because of their defense and because of Burrow. In the NFC, I got the Cowboys taking on the 49ers for the third consecutive time in the postseason, and I believe that Dak Prescott will take care of the football in this matchup. If you guys remember my playoff picks going into last year, I had the 49ers blowing out the Cowboys because I thought Dak was going to throw an INT party. He did, but that game was close. It was much closer than I thought. That Cowboy defense played their tails off. Micah Parsons bottled up Brock Purdy. And I believe in Micah Parsons to be the defensive player for the Cowboys, to have the best defense not only in the NFC, but in the NFL. Coming off a bye, I think Dallas finally gets over the hump. They get to the championship game. And in that Seattle-Philly matchup, I'm going with Philadelphia. I think Geno finally writes back to his haters. The Eagles' defense comes to play, and the Eagles go back to that championship game against the Dallas Cowboys. So in the AFC side, I have Jacksonville and Cincy, and in the NFC side, I have Dallas and Philadelphia. For my AFC champion, this is a tough one, but I got to go back all the way to 2020 when Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence met each other in the national championship game, and Joe Burrow outplayed Trevor Lawrence. I love Trevor Lawrence. I think he's an elite talent. I think he's going to be one of the best QBs in the NFL. I picked him to win league MVP, and he's my fantasy QB. But Joe Burrow is going to bounce back and beat him on the road. He's done it before, and he's going to do it again. Cincinnati represents the AFC in Super Bowl 58. And in the NFC side, although Philadelphia won the NFC last year, I think Dallas wins the NFC East this year. I think both of these teams split their respective games in the regular season, and I think the Dallas defense puts them over the top. So I got Cincinnati and Dallas in Super Bowl 58. And although the Cowboys beat the Bengals last year in the regular season with Cooper Rush under center, I think the Bengals' improved offensive line will be the missing piece to put this team over the top. The addition of Orlando Brown, Burrow taking that next step in his development, the defense playing at an all-time high level in the postseason will make them Super Bowl 58 champions. This will be a great NFL season. There are so many teams that have a shot. Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, Philadelphia, Seattle, you name it, Baltimore. So many teams that have so much talent, so much potential, and I'm excited to see how the season plays out, but I got the Bengals as Super Bowl champions. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you like this video, and be sure to subscribe to my channel.